Hello everyone, I'm Sebastian Y, and this is Managerial Economics. In this set of videos, I'm going to talk about advanced pricing strategies. This follows on from the material before on monopolies, and the overall idea here is to show some different pricing options that a monopolist could use to make even more profit than they normally would. Before we jump in, I want to do a quick review of the basic monopoly pricing. This will give us a baseline to which we can compare all of the other more advanced pricing strategies that we look at later. We're going to start out with a monopolist with a cost function C of Q equals 6Q. The corresponding marginal cost, which is the derivative of this, is 6. This is a very simple cost function with no fixed cost and a constant marginal cost of 6. This means the marginal cost curve is going to be a horizontal line at 6. That contradicts what we talked about previously, where marginal cost tends to rise as output rises. But in this set of videos, we are going to use this simple cost function just to make the math a little bit easier. The overall lessons remain the same, as our focus is not really on cost here, but on pricing. We're going to deal with a demand function Q of P equals 24 minus P. As always, we're going to start by flipping this around to solve for P instead of Q, to get our inverse demand function P of Q equals 24 minus Q. Because the slope of this demand function was -1, the slope of the inverse demand function will also be -1, but do be careful here. If you have a coefficient that is not 1, you're going to have to do a little bit more algebra here. Next, I'm going to find the marginal revenue function by simply doubling the slope of the inverse demand. In the previous set of videos, I showed how to do this using calculus, but for now, I'm just going to use the shortcut. The basic way that monopolies maximize profit is by producing the quantity where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. So I set those two things equal to each other and then solve. I'll add 2Q to both sides and subtract 6 from both sides, and then divide both sides by 2 to get a monopoly quantity of 9. To find the corresponding monopoly price, I'm going to plug that quantity of 9 into our inverse demand function right here. So we're going to get 24 minus 9 equals 15. The profit that the monopolist is going to make is revenue minus cost. So revenue is 15 times 9, and total cost is just 6 times 9. And that comes out to 81. Next, I will draw a graph of our market and then calculate the deadweight loss. Our demand function was Q equals 24 minus P. I'm going to draw that in. In our demand function, the intercepts are both 24. Remember that they may not be the same. It's just because the slope was -1. Marginal revenue function has double the slope, and so that has an intercept of 12. And then finally, I'm going to draw our marginal cost function, which is just 6. And that's going to be a horizontal line right here at 6. We found a quantity of 9, and then a corresponding price of 15. When we have a constant marginal cost and no fixed cost, the horizontal marginal cost curve is also the average total cost. The total profit the monopoly makes is going to be this rectangle right here, which has an area of 81, as we showed earlier. The deadweight loss is going to be this triangle right here. That's the loss of welfare due to the monopoly restricting output to 9 instead of the socially efficient amount. Take our demand function, 24 minus P, and we're going to plug in the socially efficient price, which we know because our marginal cost is a constant at 6, is just going to be 6, so that's going to be 18. That means our deadweight loss will have a base of 18 minus 9, so our socially efficient quantity minus monopoly quantity, and a height of 15, that's the price, minus 6, the marginal cost, divided by 2. We get 9 times 9 over 2, which is 40.5. We can also calculate the consumer surplus, and that's going to be this area up here, above the price, below the demand curve. That has a base of 9, a height of 24 minus 15, it's also 9, divided by 2, and so that's going to be the exact same thing, 40.5. We're going to keep all these numbers in mind as a baseline as we explore some more advanced pricing strategies later on. Now that we've established our monopoly pricing baseline, I'm going to give a quick overview of the type of strategies a monopoly might pursue to make even more profit. We're going to start with 4 different pricing strategies that we can directly compare back to the example that I just did. First-degree price discrimination, nonlinear pricing, two-part pricing, and block pricing. When we're done with that, we will talk about 2 related topics, versioning and bundling, but we won't compare those directly back to the example I just did. Many of the strategies we discuss here are types of price discrimination. This is a broad term containing any pricing scheme in which the price charged for each unit sold is not the same. This means that different consumers might be charged different prices, but the same consumer might be charged different prices for different units. Price discrimination is often broken down into 3 categories. First-degree price discrimination is the most extreme form of price discrimination. This means that firms have full information about willingness to pay and can charge accordingly. This is so granular that they can charge a different price for every single unit that they sell. As such, first-degree price discrimination is also called perfect price discrimination. It's the most effective form of price discrimination, but it's also the most difficult to do. In second-degree price discrimination, firms know about different willingnesses to pay for different units of the good, but cannot distinguish between them like they can in first-degree. They do know that different people have different preferences, but they rely on consumers choosing from a menu of options to distinguish themselves. It's the firm's job to carefully design a menu so that consumers will pick what they want them to pick. Second-degree price discrimination is the most broadly defined category, and many textbooks disagree with what exactly counts as second-degree price discrimination. As such, I don't personally like the term, but you may hear it, so I want you to understand what that means. Of the strategies we are going to talk about in these videos, nonlinear pricing, two-part pricing, and versioning are all sometimes called second-degree price discrimination. Third-degree price discrimination means that firms have coarse information about willingness to pay. Unlike in first-degree price discrimination, where the firm knows exactly the willingness to pay for every single unit that it could potentially sell, in third-degree price discrimination, firms know that certain groups of people tend to be more willing to pay than others, and then they charge accordingly off of that. Third-degree price discrimination is very interesting, and I want you to know what it is, but because the math is quite involved, we're not going to get into it in this class. In the next video, we are going to go into specifics about how to maximize profit using a few different pricing strategies.